The glittering facade of Manhattan has always served as the ultimate stage for the intersection of power, celebrity, and historical destiny. But few moments in the twilight of the 20th century carry the profound, almost mythic weight of a secret encounter that took place behind closed doors in the autumn of 1995. It was a period defined by intense media scrutiny, shifting cultural tides, and the agonizing restructuring of public personas for two of the most photographed individuals on the planet. On one side stood a woman who had single-handedly redefined the nature of modern monarchy, a figure of immense compassion and unprecedented global influence who was simultaneously navigating the painful, highly publicized dissolution of her marriage to the heir to the British throne. On the other side was the quintessential prince of American political royalty, a man who carried the heavy mantle of an iconic family legacy while attempting to forge his own independent path in the cutthroat world of New York media. The intersection of these two extraordinary trajectories within the private confines of a luxury hotel suite created a unique moment of historical synthesis, a meeting that was simultaneously a high-stakes professional negotiation and a profoundly human interaction between two people who understood, better than almost anyone else alive, the crushing burden of public's expectation. As we begin to peel back the layers of this fascinating historical vignette, we invite you to become a permanent part of our community by subscribing to the channel, ensuring you never miss our deep dives into the hidden chapters of contemporary history and the extraordinary lives of those who shaped our world. To fully comprehend the gravity of this meeting, one must first understand the atmosphere of intense anticipation and meticulous secrecy that enveloped the entire operation, turning a relatively straightforward business proposal into a complex exercise in discretion. The setting for this legendary encounter was none other than the historic Carlyle Hotel, an establishment deeply woven into the fabric of Manhattan's elite social history and long favored by heads of state, international royalty, and Hollywood legends for its unparalleled commitment to privacy. For days leading up to the rendezvous, a small, highly trusted circle of aides worked tirelessly in the shadows, orchestrating a complex logistics plan designed to evade the ever-present lenses of the paparazzi who tracked every single movement of the British princess. The atmosphere within the upper floor suite was thick with a palpable sense of anticipation, a nervous energy shared equally by the small entourage waiting alongside the princess and the ambitious young publisher, making his way through the bustling New York streets. When the doorbell finally rang, it signaled the commencement of an encounter that would seamlessly blend the rigid traditions of European aristocracy with the effortless, charismatic charm of American high society, creating an immediate, magnetic chemistry between the two protagonists. Witnesses to the arrival recalled that the air seemed to crackle with an extra layer of sparkle, an undeniable recognition between two individuals who recognized in each other the rare, shared experience of living life inside a permanent media fishbowl. The initial moments of the meeting were characterized by a fascinating display of social diplomacy, as both figures sought to balance their immense public personas with the necessity of a relaxed, informal conversation over morning coffee. The attorney-turned-publisher, who had only recently been crowned by the popular press as the most attractive man alive, possessed a natural, easygoing demeanor that immediately began to thaw the formal protocols that typically governed royal interactions. Yet beneath that polished, confident exterior, those present detected a subtle, endearing undercurrent of vulnerability, an understated need for reassurance that revealed just how much weight the young American attached to the success of this meeting and the approval of the woman sitting across from him. The princess, renowned for her extraordinary empathy and innate ability to put people at their ease, immediately picked up on this subtle hesitation and responded with her trademark warmth, blending a quick-witted humor with a gentle, encouraging attentiveness. This fluid dynamic transformed what could have been a cold, transactional business meeting into a lively, genuinely flirtatious, and deeply engaging social dialogue that lasted far longer than originally scheduled. As the conversation progressed, the focus shifted towards the stack of conceptual layouts and creative proposals the young publisher had brought with him, documents that represented the visual identity of his bold new media venture. This ambitious publication aimed to brilliantly merge the separate worlds of political discourse and popular culture, presenting them through a highly stylized mainstream lens that demanded a revolutionary approach to cover design. The ideas presented to the princess were nothing short of audacious, reflecting a creative boldness that sought to completely upend traditional editorial standards and present the royal icon in a light the world had never seen before. One provocative concept envisioned her dressed in historical American military attire, a visual metaphor that would have sent shockwaves through both the British establishment and the global media landscape by directly referencing revolutionary history. Another, perhaps even more radical design concept captured her in a starkly realistic, candid moment in the back of a luxury limousine, her hand reaching to roll up the tinted window in a direct, artistic commentary on her perpetual struggle to evade the prying eyes of international photojournalists. Each proposal was met with careful consideration and a sharp, intuitive understanding of how such imagery would resonate with a public that hungrily consumed her every move, highlighting her sophisticated grasp of media dynamics. Yet, even as the camaraderie in the room grew and the mutual admiration became undeniable, the complex machinery of image management and personal survival dictated a much more cautious approach than the enthusiastic young publisher had hoped for. The princess, navigating a precarious transitional phase in her public life where a single misstep could jeopardize her hard-won independence, possessed an innate understanding that even a venture backed by the most famous name in America was far from a guaranteed success. She recognized that her endorsement was a currency of immeasurable value, one that required absolute certainty regarding the stability and long-term viability of the platform before she could fully commit her global brand to its cover. With characteristic grace, intelligence, and a touch of playful diplomacy, she ultimately chose to decline the immediate offer to grace the inaugural issue, leaving the ambitious publisher disappointed but entirely captivated by her charm. However, rather than closing the door completely on the relationship, she extended a tantalizing counter-proposal, suggesting that she would seriously consider appearing on the cover of a milestone future edition once the publication had established its footing. This clever compromise ensured that the meeting ended on a note of sustained intrigue, leaving both parties with a profound sense of mutual respect and a shared understanding of the delicate dance between power, press, and personal legacy that would continue to define their remaining years. The immediate aftermath of that closed-door meeting at the Carlyle Hotel rippled through the inner sanctuaries of both the British royal household and the competitive media landscape of New York, sparking a wave of quiet fascination among the select few who were privy to the encounter. When the charismatic young publisher returned to his editorial offices, the atmosphere among his core staff was charged with intense curiosity. Everyone eager to learn if the most famous woman in the world had agreed to front their revolutionary inaugural issue. With his characteristic good humor and an easygoing resilience that masked any underlying professional disappointment, he entered the room and delivered the news of her polite refusal with a light-hearted remark that focused entirely on her striking physical grace and undeniable charm. This casual, confident reaction perfectly encapsulated the unique worldview of a man who, despite his immense family burden, refused to let a professional setback dampen his admiration for a kindred spirit who operated on the same rarefied global plane. For the princess, however, the motivations driving her decision to grant this highly secretive audience in the first place were far more intricate and multi-layered than a simple curiosity about a new American media venture. Close confidants and personal secretaries who observed her actions during this turbulent period would later reveal that her willingness to meet with America's most eligible bachelor was propelled by a fascinating mixture of long-term maternal ambition and a classic, deeply human streak of aristocratic rivalry. To understand the depth of this motivation, one must look at the way she envisioned the future of her own children, particularly her eldest son, who was destined from birth to one day inherit the massive responsibility of the British monarchy. She looked across the Atlantic and saw in the young American publisher a masterful blueprint for how a modern, high-profile individual could successfully navigate the relentless onslaught of media attention while maintaining an air of dignity, intelligence, and approachability. She openly expressed her profound hope to close friends and prominent magazine editors that her eldest son would grow up to handle the crushing weight of public scrutiny with the same effortless sophistication, smart instincts, and poise that the young attorney displayed so naturally on the world stage. It was a forward-thinking perspective, demonstrating her desire to break away from the rigid, emotionally distant traditions of the old palace guard, and instead look toward a more dynamic, modern, and media-savvy model of public service for the next generation of royals. Yet alongside these noble maternal aspirations, there existed a much more immediate, playful, and fiercely competitive reason for the secret Manhattan rendezvous, one that directly involved her sister-in-law, the Duchess of York. Sarah Ferguson, who had captured the public's imagination with her own boisterous and unconventional entry into the royal family, had long made it known within their shared social circles that the handsome American heir was a particular personal favorite and an ultimate pop culture pin-up figure. The princess, possessing a sharp wit and an occasional desire to gently stir the waters of family dynamics, took an undeniable delight in orchestrating a meeting with the very man her sister-in-law admired from afar, adding an extra layer of private triumph to the entire New York excursion. This complex interplay of strategic planning, genuine admiration, and light-hearted domestic rivalry added a rich, texturized human dimension to an event that the public would only begin to fully comprehend decades later. While the conversations inside the luxury suite remained strictly professional and delightfully social, the broader context of their respective lives at that exact moment in time reveals a striking, almost haunting parallelism that makes their brief convergence all the more poignant. In the autumn of 1995, both individuals stood at a critical crossroads, balancing on the precipice of major life transformations, while trying to maintain control over narratives that were constantly being hijacked by the global press. The princess was entangled in the final agonizing stages of her formal separation from Prince Charles, a process that was fundamentally reshaping the structure of the British monarchy and forcing her to reinvent her public identity as an independent global humanitarian. She was operating without the traditional protection of the palace apparatus, relying instead on her own sharp instincts, a small circle of loyal advisors, and her unparalleled connection to the public to shield herself from an increasingly aggressive media onslaught. Across the ocean, her American counterpart was engaged in an equally daring act of self-reinvention, attempting to step out from the long, intimidating shadow of his father's political martyrdom by establishing himself as a serious, innovative force in the publishing world. The launch of his innovative magazine represented a massive professional risk, a bold gamble to prove that he was more than just a handsome face or a legacy name, but a capable modern businessman who could accurately read the cultural zeitgeist of a rapidly changing nation. The shared vulnerability that the princess's staff detected in him during their coffee meeting was a direct reflection of this immense pressure, a quiet acknowledgement that despite his wealth and status, he was an outsider trying to conquer a fiercely competitive industry on his own terms. Furthermore, their personal lives during this exact window of time were marked by intense romantic scrutiny and the complex realities of navigating adult relationships under a permanent public spotlight. The young publisher was deeply involved in a passionate, intensely private romance with a stylish fashion publicist, a relationship that would culminate in a highly secretive wedding the very next year, away from the prying eyes of the media. This relationship, while deeply loving, was already beginning to show signs of the volatile, high-pressure dynamic that inevitably occurs when an ordinary private citizen is suddenly thrust into the blinding glare of the world's most intense media spotlight. The princess, meanwhile, was adjusting to a life of profound personal autonomy, exploring new emotional horizons while simultaneously carrying the perpetual loneliness that comes with being the most scrutinized woman on earth. This shared experience of isolation at the very top of the social pyramid created an unspoken, intuitive bond between them during their brief encounter. An understanding that required no explanation because it was written into the very fabric of their daily existences. As the year 1995 drew to a close, the launch of the ambitious new publication proved to be a spectacular cultural phenomenon, vindicating the publisher's vision and establishing the magazine as a definitive mirror of late 90s American society. Yet, even as the glossy pages flew off the newsstands and the publication achieved the commercial success the princess had deemed necessary, the window for their proposed future collaboration began to narrow in ways that neither could have possibly anticipated. The rapid acceleration of events in both of their lives created a sense of forward momentum that left little room for looking back, as the relentless demands of their public roles pulled them in increasingly complex and exhausting directions. The sophisticated dance of diplomacy that had played out so beautifully in the quiet of the Carlyle Hotel remained a cherished, closely guarded secret among a handful of loyal aides, a rare moment of genuine human connection that stood in stark contrast to the chaotic, often predatory nature of the media storms raging outside. The tension between their desire for private happiness and the insatiable appetite of the public for every detail of their existence was reaching a critical boiling point, setting the stage for a series of dramatic shifts that would forever alter the course of modern cultural history. The passage of time has transformed that fleeting, secretive morning at the Carlyle Hotel from a curious piece of media gossip into a profoundly symbolic prologue to a double tragedy that would shake the foundations of global celebrity culture. In the immediate years that followed their historic encounter, both individuals continued to hurtle along their respective high-velocity trajectories, completely unaware that their lives were mirroring each other in increasingly eerie and devastating ways. For the British princess, the year 1996 brought the final official conclusion to her tumultuous marriage, a legal severing that stripped her of her Royal Highness title, but paradoxically amplified her status as a liberated, transcendent global icon. No longer bound by the rigid constraints and conservative traditions of the British court, she threw herself into humanitarian work with an unprecedented, almost frantic energy, utilizing her unparalleled media draw to shine a blinding spotlight on forgotten crises, landmine victims, and marginalized communities around the world. Yet, as her public impact grew, the aggression of the international press reached a fever pitch, creating a dangerous, suffocating environment where every step she took outside her home was met with a wall of flashing cameras and shouting photographers. This relentless, predatory pursuit culminated in the fateful summer of 1997 in a high-speed car crash deep within a dark Parisian underpass, a sudden and shocking end that plunged the entire world into an unprecedented state of collective, raw grief. The global outpouring of emotion that followed her passing demonstrated that she was far more than a mere member of an ancient European dynasty. She was a universally beloved figure whose vulnerability and empathy had touched hundreds of millions of human hearts. Strikingly, her American counterpart was navigating his own intense, high-stakes chapter of life during this exact same period, experiencing both the exhilarating heights of creative success and the crushing weight of domestic pressure. His bold media venture continued to publish its highly stylized blend of politics and pop culture, remaining a staple of American newsstands, though it constantly battled the volatile financial realities of the late 90s magazine market. On a personal level, his quiet marriage to his stylish fashion publicist bride had quickly become the primary target for New York's aggressive tabloid media, forcing the young couple to live their private lives under a perpetual, exhausting state of siege. The young woman who had entered this relationship as a private citizen, completely unaccustomed to the blinding glare of the public spotlight, struggled immensely with the sudden total loss of her anonymity, causing deep, visible strains within their high-profile union. Then, in the midsummer of 1999, just 2 short years after the tragic loss of the British princess, the American political prince met his own untimely fate when the light aircraft he was piloting plunged into the dark Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Martha's Vineyard, claiming his life alongside his beloved wife and her sister. The sudden, violent conclusion to his life echoed the shock of the Paris tragedy, effectively ending an entire era of American political romance and leaving a legacy that felt profoundly unfulfilled. When one examines the full arc of these two extraordinary lives, the historical significance of their brief, secretive convergence in New York becomes overwhelmingly clear, illustrating a deep, structural shift in the nature of modern fame and institutional power. The princess's early observation about the young publisher, specifically her earnest desire for her own eldest son to emulate his media-savvy and sophisticated public conduct, has proven to be incredibly prophetic as the next generation of royals has come of age. Today, the world watches as her sons navigate their own highly complex, deeply fractured relationships with the global press, employing strategies that directly reflect the ongoing, difficult balance between public duty and the fierce defense of personal privacy. The magazine that served as the catalyst for the historic Carlyle Hotel meeting ultimately closed its doors permanently in the year 2001, serving as a time capsule for a specific, vibrant moment in media history when politics and celebrity culture first completely fused together. The newly revealed details of their conversation, preserved through the memoirs of loyal secretaries and detailed historical deep dives, offer a rare humanizing glimpse into the private mechanics of two people who were entirely trapped by their own immense cultural significance. It reveals that beneath the polished veneer of global celebrity, there existed two deeply intelligent, highly intuitive individuals who recognized the inherent dangers of their positions but chose to face the world with an enduring grace, quick wit, and unmistakable style. Their meeting was not merely a failed business negotiation or a simple social chat between two attractive, high-profile historical figures. It was an intersection of two distinct cultural dynasties, a moment where the old world of European royalty met the new world of American media aristocracy. As history continues to process the immense impact of both individuals, that quiet morning in Manhattan stands out as a beautiful, haunting testament to what might have been a moment of light and shared understanding before the darkness of tragedy claimed them both. The legacy of that encounter endures because it reminds us of a time when the world's most captivating figures could still create a moment of genuine human connection, stepping behind the heavy curtain of their public obligations to share a laugh, a cup of coffee, and a mutual recognition of their extraordinary shared destiny.